there, folks. How's it going? Welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to another one of our weekly Spectre discussion videos. And today we are here to talk all about Episode 5, A Monster of the Imagination. But before we get into the video proper, I do, as always, have to give a big thank you to those of you who shared last week's video over on Twitter. At Matt87Eagle, at Deep Not That Deep, at RebelGirl0309, at Clear Chicken, and at Matt Monies. Thanks so much for sharing last week's video, you guys, and if you too would like to have your name shouted out in next week's Spectre video, then be sure to share this video around on the internet, and then tag me at JoJo Talks Too Much over on Twitter, and I will be sure to shout your name out in next week's video. So, it has been a hot minute since the last time we got to spend some real quality time with our boy Kurou. And Kurou is kind of the focus of this week's episode. It's mostly focused on Kurou. It is called the Monster of Imagination. It's also focused on the Steel Lady of herself, but it's mostly a Kurou episode. And I'm not against that. In fact, I'm very much here for that. The episode in itself is sort of split into three little acts, I guess we can say. There's Kurou versus Steel Lady Nanase. There is the secrets of the Sakuragawa family. And we got the planning of the next move. Those are like the sort of three-act structure this episode is going to be following. And I suppose we can find no better place to start than Kurou versus Steel Lady Nanase, which starts off on how do I put this? It's not that it's bad, it's just a slow-paced fight, if that makes any sense. Kurou is very clearly like on the back foot. He's sort of stumbling around. He's not really sure of himself. He's a little uncertain because he's not even really totally sure what Steel Lady Nanase is even supposed to be. Like, he knows it's a ghost of some kind, but he's not sure what about it is causing it to even appear, and he's not sure like what angle to really tackle this problem from. And the fact that, you know, she wields a giant steel friggin' beam, so that's kind of an issue. And the fight, while it is certainly slower paced than other fights we've seen, not just in this series, but in other shows this season, it still manages to be particularly grim. There's parts of this fight that are shockingly brutal. I'm thinking in particular of Steel Lady Nanase just taking the beam and crushing Kurou's damn head with it. I even like reacted, like I cringed, not because it was like, oh, how embarrassing. It was more just like, ooh, nasty. It was brutal. Thankfully, the show doesn't like show Kurou's like brain matter splattered up against the steel beams, but we do see him like reforming, and that's the other thing that I want to point out. The return of the regeneration ability that Kurou has after eating the mermaid flesh, I believe. See, Nene from Hanako, she ate mermaid scales. Kurou just went, screw the scales, going straight for the meat, although not really. But he has the regeneration abilities from that. And so that allows him to sort of restructure himself. We saw this back in episode 1, and it's been since episode 1 since we last saw this. And I've seen some folks say, like, how come we don't get the stuff we saw in episode 1? That stuff in episode 1 was meant to hook you, and then you gotta hang out and enjoy the mystery, and then you get to have the regeneration, cool looking stuff back. And the way they animate it, it's so like the flesh like kind of morphs back into place, almost like flip-floppy. It's just weird to look at. It's like, ooh, nasty, but cool at the same time. And I have to applaud them for the level of restraint it takes to have that. And that also goes for the original creator as well, Shiro Daira, for having that ability to not go full shonen and like full like action and show constant fights with Kurou all the time. No, this is a mystery show that has a heavy focus on character. There's certainly action in it, and there's some cool supernatural abilities that are in play, but it's not really about that. But at the same time, when they do get to show that, they most certainly do so, and Brains Base is no slouch in this regard. They really go all in to show you how cool this like the flesh morphing over top of Kurou's face can look, and it does look fantastic, I gotta say. Again, kudos for the restraint. They could have easily gone overboard with this and just been like, look how cool it is, the fall is cool, right? Like, look at the action. They could have gone over the top with the action, but there's a level of self-restraint. That's really cool. I really appreciate that. It keeps these moments where we see that ability more enticing, the fact that we don't get to see it often. And it happens a few times. Like, we see at one point Steel Lady Nanase rip Kurou's ear off, because again, while this fight is slow, it is brutal, and we see that moment where she rips the ear off, and so we see it like a few times in the episode. And the ear, like, it's weird because you would think that the ear would just kind of float back into place, because the way his abilities work is it doesn't. There's a scientific term stating that matter isn't destroyed or created, it's just reconfigured. And that's sort of true here. Like, you would assume that the ear would just sort of float back onto place, because we see that, like, the flesh for Kurou sort of, like, morphs back to the way it's supposed to be, but it's sort of like, it becomes like goop. It's weird and cool, but I really dig it. It's certainly kind of, like I said, it's nasty, but it's very, like, I don't know, there's something about watching it that just kind of makes me happy to see. It's just cool looking. I don't know why I'm suddenly a gore hound, but it was cool to see. And yeah, like I said, the fight is particularly brutal. But what's even more brutal than the fighting itself is the dynamic between our trio, because again, this is a mystery series that has a heavy focus on its characters. And at the center of this particular arc isn't just Kurou, it isn't just Kotoko, it's Saki. And Saki in Kotoko watching Kurou fight, it showed the dichotomy between the two of them. Because while Kotoko was very confident, almost too confident, in Kurou's ability to face Steel Lady Nanase, Saki was obviously very concerned, but almost too concerned. In the sense that one has a total fear of Kurou, while the other one is totally obsessed with Kurou for maybe the wrong reasons. And it's interesting because they appeal to a specific part of Kurou that I think Kurou needs. Like, Kurou needs that maturity that comes with Saki, but Saki's too afraid of this other part of him that even he hates, this part of him that he can't accept. Whereas Kotoko is able to accept all of Kurou. She's willing to accept both the light and the dark in him, but she's a little too obsessive, she's a little too immature, and that's not really what Kurou is looking for in a partner. So it sort of makes this weird sort of love triangle type thing, although Saki is clearly still sort of like, there's always going to be that romantic link between the two of them. If you've ever been in a relationship where you just knew the relationship was done, so you ended it, and there's still that, like, tension, that, like, underlying romantic, like, I'm still into you, you're still into me, but it just wouldn't work out, that kind of thing. That's what these two have, and it's kind of hard to watch, but I think Saki is willing to move on, especially after hearing him straight up say, "So this is your girlfriend?" He's like, "Yes, I am afraid that this is my girlfriend." And of course, Kochiko's like, "Oh, thanks, that's cool, glad you said it like that, makes me, that did wonders for my self-esteem, thanks, boyfriend." Like, it was just, oh, it hurts. But at the same time, I kind of like the dynamic. I've seen some people say, like, that they don't like how Kotoko is acting. I think, like, that's kind of the point. She's meant to be sort of immature and not at the same level of maturity that these two are. And Kurou wants that in a relationship and isn't getting it in the Kotoko dynamic, but I feel like if you give her time, she'll reach that level of maturity. And I think, and this is going to start a shipping war, and I just know it, but if you were to ask me, in my humble opinion, I think Kurou belongs with Kotoko. Saki can go ahead and date her senior in the police force, because that guy's awesome. And I'm sure that would work out, like, in terms of their personality. And I want all three of these characters to be happy, but I just feel like Kotoko is a better fit for Kurou, because Kurou has seen some truly dark and depraved crap. And in order to talk about that, we're going to have to go into the secrets of the Sakuragawa family. This is Kurou's family. And it is dark, because basically they say 10 generations ago, Kurou's, I guess, like, great-great-great-great-great-grandfather decided that he wanted the ability to see into the future, as most of us would. And he comes to this conclusion by being like, if you have a bad liver, you need to eat something with a good liver. If you have bad eyes, you should eat the eyes of something that has good eyes, which is not, I feel like that's probably not the case, but I mean, like, you do you, except don't, because this accidentally leads to the death of several members of the Sakuragawa family. because the head of the household realizes, like, wait, if that's true, then if we eat the flesh of something that could see into the future, then perhaps we will get that ability. So they eat what is the flesh of the Kudon, which is this creepy-looking cow thing. It's not even really like a full-size cow. It's like a calf with a human head. It's just creepy-looking. I did. No, sir, I didn't like it. I mean, I did, because it's creepy-looking, but like, oof, nasty. Anyway, and he realizes that all of the members of his family who are eating this are dying, and even if they do get the ability to see into the future, they die immediately afterwards, so what to do? So he realizes, well, if I eat the flesh of something that is meant to be immortal, then maybe that will stave off the Kudon's unfortunate case of dying after they see into the future, because the Kudon themselves die after they see into the future. So you'd think that that would have been something he thought about, but apparently not. I don't think there was much thinking at all going on in this plan, if I'm totally honest. And then, several generations later, poor Kurou is told it's time for dinner. And exactly what you think happens. Kurou is having dinner with his siblings. I believe that couldn't have been all his siblings. It had to be like cousins as well and stuff like that. Other younger members of the household. And his grandmother's like, yeah, everybody dig in. And everybody digs in, and all of his siblings and cousins start to throw up blood. They all start to die because they can't handle the meat, but Kurou is able to sort of withstand that. And his grandmother's like, cool, you can see into the future, but in order to do that, you're gonna have to die first. And she kills him, but he comes back, and she literally keeps killing him and cutting him up until he no longer feels pain, which, like, yikes. This episode is definitely intense, and that's not even getting into the Steel Lady Nanase stuff, but honestly, the Steel Lady Nanase stuff we kind of went into a little bit last week. She is a being of imagination. It's very meta. It sort of reminded me of the Norse gods in Marvel Comics, where they're only as real as people believe them to be. So yeah, the culprit is the internet, because somebody made the Steel Lady Nanase wiki, and then she became real because of the wiki, which is very meta, and I really support it, because that's a cool idea for a mystery. But I didn't really want to talk about the mystery too much, because we can go into that more next week. I just really wanted to hone in on Kurou, because I feel like Kurou is kind of like the most understated of the three characters right now. I feel like we needed a full video talking about Kurou, so that's what I wanted to do here. With that said, everybody, I would say that this episode is like a cup of English breakfast. It feels like everything's sort of coming to light. Feels like I'm starting to get to know these characters more, like everything's starting to click on. So yeah, kind of, this episode's like an English breakfast tea. That analogy made sense to me. It might not make sense to you, but that's okay. And with that said, that is a wrap on today's video. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, then go ahead and hit that like button. Maybe even consider sharing the video around on the internet. And go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you want to stick around and see more content from me. And if you do, be sure to click on that bell icon so that you'll know immediately when a new video of mine comes out. And if you want to go above and beyond, then consider checking out our Teespring store and grabbing yourself a mug, or checking out our Patreon page, which really helps support the channel. And speaking of our Patreon page, I want to give a big thank you to those of you who support the channel over on Patreon. Andrew W., Calvin A., Crowbar of Irony, Daniel G., Digger the Fox, Emily, Ionos, Urza, Ginkotaku, Godzilla Fan, No For Nothing, Maria Teresa, Marshall B., Mirth Mouser, Cell, Shadow Creative, Stephen G., Sakochi, Tristan G., and Veridin. A huge thank you to all of you who support this channel over on Patreon, and if you too would like to join the T Squadron, then be sure to check out the link in the description to check out our Patreon page and get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord for as little as $1 a month. And with all that said, I want to once again thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have an awesome day, and if you are feeling stressed out today, then you go have yourself a warm cup of tea, and I will talk to you all again real soon.